Cecilia Shepard was from Loma Linda, which is near San Bernardino in Southern California, and she had attended Pacific Union College up in Northern California up until June of 1969, and she returned in late September to get some of her belongings and returned to Southern California to attend the University of California, Riverside. And Brian Hartnell was a friend of hers from college up there. And so when he saw her there or knew she was there, he asked her if she would like to spend the day with him. And they ended up driving out to Lake Berryessa in the late afternoon. At around 4 p.m. on a warm afternoon, Brian was driving his Volkswagen Carmagia from the north along the west coast of Lake Berryessa through the Berryessa subdivision, Rancho Monticello, and the Berryessa Marina, and didn't quite get to park headquarters before he stopped and parked his car on the side of the road. And then Brian and Cecilia walked down to the lakeside at this spot right here and relaxed in the sun. Now I suppose that the Zodiac killer left the Vallejo area and drove towards Lake Berryessa through Napa. And it's about a 40-minute drive from Vallejo to Napa. And then he exited there, heading north through Vichy Springs, then Mosquite Corners, and then past the Lake Berryessa Park headquarters, and then he parked somewhere around there, and then started looking for 2 victims. Now at some point around 6:30, the Zodiac killer spotted David and Cecilia on the lakeside, and he put on his hood, and he had clip-on sunglasses, and he approached Brian and Cecilia with a gun, and he stated that he had escaped from prison and needed money in a car, and that he would need to tie them up. And then after tying them up, he stabbed Brian multiple times in the back. And then he stabbed Cecilia many more times than Brian in the back and side and front. And then he casually walked away. Now at this point, something might have took place that's not discussed a great deal about the Zodiac killer. David Rayfield was out with his father, and he might have saw the Zodiac killer. I saw Zodiac at a distance of about 100 yards, so I wouldn't be able to comment on his face. He was walking along the hillside about halfway between the road and the lake, but I remember him being a stockier person. He wasn't nimble when he was walking, and when he turned to walk away, he wasn't like a smooth, athletic person. To me, he seemed a little overweight and on the clumsier side. Not having followed the story or even having been re-interviewed by the police, I didn't realize Zodiac came upon us just before he stabbed the young couple. I sort of assumed I saw him making his getaway. I'll tell you one thing, he didn't like the fact that I was carrying a gun. He turns and looks at me and my gun for approximately 5 or 6 seconds, then turned and went up the hill in a southerly direction. I said to myself, that was funny. This guy wasn't carrying a fishing pole. It's funny you should mention the composite sketches, 'cause I saw the sketches with the hair on them, and I didn't remember black hair, neatly trimmed hair on the man that I saw. What did you see? I didn't remember him having a full head of hair. Had Zodiac, as far back as 1970, been telling us that he had worn a wig at Berryessa? Now I recall Hartnell had gotten a sense of that before he was stabbed. I remember a kind of greasy forehead, he told me. The attacker had sweaty dark brown hair, which showed through dark glasses covering eyelets in the hood. And it's not impossible the guy was wearing a wig. If Zodiac had been the dark-haired man, then eyewitnesses had seen him without his hood and observed events preceding the crime. Maybe the reason that the two sketches don't look alike and they are of the same guy, the Zodiac, is because the Zodiac was wearing a black wig at Lake Berryessa. And you have to keep in mind that the San Francisco sketch artist is much more skilled than the Napa County sketch artist. And the San Francisco witnesses, one being a police officer, got a much better look at the suspect. Now, after stabbing Cecilia and Brian and walking uphill back to his car and writing on Brian Hartnell's car door this message here, proving that he was the Zodiac killer, the Zodiac drove from Lake Berryessa to downtown Napa and made the phone call at 7:40 p.m. And in my opinion, he didn't stop. It does take about an hour to get to Napa. At the payphone, the Zodiac did not hang the phone up, and his left palm print was left on the receiver of the telephone. Brian and Cecilia yelled for help, and fortunately a man and his son were fishing out on the lake and heard their cries for help and went and got a park ranger. Brian and Cecilia were driven by ambulance to Queen of the Valley Hospital, where Cecilia died 2 days later from her injuries. The crime took place on a Saturday night, sometime between 6:30 and 6:40. It's about a 10-minute walk from the side of the road to the side of the lake. It was not dark out until the Zodiac reached Napa. This crime seems to be the most different from the other crimes, and it seems to be the most risky. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved, and I hope it gave you a little bit to think about, and I'll see you next week with a new episode.